In our 1985, Kenner's vintage Star Wars line was canceled, giving way to the short-lived Droids and Ewoks spin-offs before they suffered the same fate in 1986. But there is an alternate 1985 that saw the beginning of another chapter in the Star Wars saga, with the release of new playsets, vehicles, and even a Grand Moff Tarkin who had survived the destruction of the first Death Star. Hi, I'm Dan Larson, and this is Star Wars: The Epic Continues. Kenner's Star Wars line began with the release of the first film in 1977. There could not be a better marketing tool for toys than a 2-hour sci-fi space opera featuring a band of unlikely heroes coming together to rescue a princess held prisoner on an impenetrable battle station. Star Wars toys were the staple of the action figure industry, leading the way as all other brands played catch-up. With the release of Return of the Jedi in 1983, the clock had begun to tick on how long Star Wars could maintain its industry dominance without producing another film. Masters of the Universe, G.I. Joe, Transformers were rapidly taking market share away, fueled by their own 30-minute commercials airing every day on television, a much more immediate and sustained influence on the toy-buying demographic. By 1985, 2 years since the resolution of the intergalactic conflict, Kenner's only choice was to start with a new story, as their attempts to mine the 3 existing films for additional characters were underperforming in the toy aisle. For the series to move forward, a new villain would be needed, as well as new heroes, new exotic locations, and new vehicles. Lucasfilm had no plans, so Kenner began developing their own characters and concepts. In the continuity of the 3 films, the Empire grew out of the conflict known as the Clone Wars, which Obi-Wan refers to when he first presents Luke his father's lightsaber in Episode 4. The deaths of Darth Vader and Emperor Palpatine would result in the total collapse of the Empire and, in Kenner's version, would result in a return to those same Clone Wars. Based on a previously rejected design for the Emperor's Royal Guard, Atha Prime and his army of clone warriors would menace the now fully realized and redesigned heroes Luke Skywalker, Jedi Knight, and Han Solo, Princess Leia not included. It would have been a Star War on 2 fronts, as our heroes not only had to deal with Atha Prime and his clones, but also the reassembly of the Empire itself by a Grand Moff Tarkin who had somehow managed to escape the destruction of the first Death Star. There's probably a good 2 or 3 seconds that gets cut out in the movie version between that shot of Tarkin and the actual kablam of the Death Star. Plenty of time to get beamed out by Imperial Scotty or something. Should I say Imperial Miles O'Brien? Which Star Trek reference are the kids going to get these days? Kenner conceived of several new vehicle and playset designs which never reached the physical model stage, like Atha Prime's signature ship, the Apex Invader, the XP-38 Landspeeder, and a potentially mind-blowingly massive Imperial Outpost playset. They were expanding the mythology while giving the past its due with a Rebel blockade runner, TIE bomber, and Luke's T-16 Skyhopper. Kenner also worked out several budget-friendly evolved or variant concepts of existing molds. A little modification here, different colored plastic in the mold, and there's a whole new vehicle to advance the play structure. It's an approach that is still widely used today and very successful. Kenner was ahead of its time. A snow speeder becomes a sand speeder, an all-terrain armored transport becomes an all-terrain ion cannon, and a lonely single-seat X-Wing gets a co-pilot, or maybe it's a passenger seat. There were new droids and aliens that, for the purpose of visualization, were kit-dashed from existing pieces that would surely see new, unique sculpts were they to actually make it to the production stage. 3 different types of Imperial attack droids, and a thing called a Mongo beefhead tribesman. Do you say Mungo or Mongo? It would have been a completely different Star Wars in 1986, one that we can only imagine from the future. Instead of a Star Wars driven by a fully realized narrative, it would have been a Star Wars that allowed the creation of your own stories within the universe, driven by action figure and playset concepts that Kenner was proposing. This could have been extrapolated out over the years to come without ever needing a movie, cartoon, or comics. Some of these concepts did make it into Star Wars lines here in our world years later. What might have been Atha Prime shows up as an Imperial Sentinel as part of the expanded universe inspired by the Dark Empire comics in 1998. And of course, Tarkin did finally get his action figure release in 1997. Still no Mongo Beefhead. Where Star Wars might have gone if this line makes it to the shelves will forever remain a mystery, an oddity reserved for that alternate 1985. Thanks for watching. Please hit like, make sure you subscribe, and share this video. Probably not a good idea to put out a character with the last name Prime in 1985. I'm guessing that wouldn't have stood for long Hasbro didn't own Kenner yet, but if they'd try to pull that, they would have.
Cut.